Where is Vulkan? Vulkan is one of the most badass Primarchs that was ever been made. His story alone actually eclipsed some of the main Primarch stories, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But one of the main things about Vulkan is that he is a perpetual, which means that he cannot die. Every time you strike Vulkan down, he just reappears, coming right back at you, which means he should be around technically in the Warhammer 40,000 storyline. Now, just a warning for people who are still reading certain books, I am going to be talking about spoilers from the Siege of Terror, specifically the latest Echoes of Eternity book, and also I'm going to be talking about some spoilers with the Beast Arises book series as well. So if you haven't read those books, if you're currently reading those books and you don't want to be spoiled, then please leave the video now. This is your first and only warning. So Vulkan's story is one of the saddest ones because of course he was at the Isfahan massacre when Horus, Fulgrim, the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, the Alpha Legion betrayed the Salamanders, the Iron Hands, and the Raven Guard, and all their legions were massacred. But I would go further to say that he has more of a sorrowful story because unlike Korax, who escaped and got to kind of reform his legion, Ferrus Manus died because his head was chopped off, so he couldn't really feel anything. Vulkan was taken into captivity by Conrad Kurz and tortured and tortured and tortured, and he suffered at the hands of one of the most degenerate Primarchs there's ever been made. And we all know what happened in that. Eventually, he did escape. He got to beat the living crap out of Conrad Kurz with his hammer. You know, it is also a hammer. Smash, one of the great scenes Vulkan's ever done. He got to Macragge, and down there, of course, he got stabbed, he got shanked. Everyone thought he was proper dead, and then he got chucked in a volcano, and he got revived. I'm telling you, it's an emotional storyline with Vulkan. Vulkan then made his way back to Terra via the Webway with a small contingent of his salamanders, and there he was given the ultimate task by the Emperor to guard the Webway entrance into the Golden Throne, which technically is probably one of the most important wars or important tasks that you could give a Primarch. Yes, we had the full siege going on above, but down below with all the demons trying to break through the Golden Throne to consume the Emperor, that is literally one of the greatest battles that has never been told. Well, it has been told with the new Siege of Terror series, because in the new Echoes of Eternity book, we actually have Vulkan showing off his power and showing off himself defending the Emperor. He actually fought Magnus. Magnus's task was to find the Golden Throne via the Webway and bring it down. Vulkan actually went inside the Webway in Echoes of Eternity. He fought through all the demons, and then he found his brother Magnus, and he had an absolute magnificent showdown. For those of you who've read the duel, then you'll not understand how epic it was with Vulkan constantly being killed by Magnus, Magnus killing him in certain ways. He was burning him, he was basically taking his mouth away, so he suffocated to death, but Vulkan just kept coming back, because again, Vulkan is perpetual, again and again and again, and he finally basically wore Magnus down. Magnus tried to show Vulkan how he made these decisions, and Vulkan was like, no, Magnus, you're wrong for everything. Then he basically beat him over the head with his hammer, and yeah, he just kind of defeated Magnus. But there's a lot more to that story that I'm making on. Again, if you read the books, you'll understand. I'm briefly going over it. And then the last shot we get of Vulkan, because Magnus basically tore him apart atom by atom before he eventually was kind of banished or defeated, is this broken husk slowly walking back to the Webway, and he's dragging his hammer with them. So we know he eventually gets back to the Webway, and I'm sure he's going to get back to the palace, but he's not going to be there in time to, jump on board the Vengeful Spirit with the Emperor and Dawn and Sanguinius for the final battle. Now, if we jump forward in time around 1500 years later, after the Horus Heresy, we have the War of the Beast. The Imperium is in a state of unacknowledgement, let's say. They think they've won, they're the best, nothing can harm them, but the War of the Beast absolutely changes that. Vulkan is the only loyalist Primarch who is remaining. All the other loyalist Primarchs are either dead or missing. Gilliman's in stasis, Dawn's missing. Dawn's not dead. Korax is vanished. Lehman Russ has vanished. You get the picture. He's the only one left, but he has nothing to do with the Imperium. He's actually gone into self-exile. He's exiled himself onto a planet called Caldera, which some of you may recognize, where they burned that Eldar child to death. And he's basically protecting that planet. And when the War of the Beast kicks off, Terra comes under threat, and the Imperial forces who remain actually go on a hunt for Vulkan. They need Vulkan to lead their army. A lot of things happen in between, but basically Vulkan does end up leading the Imperial force to Ullanor, and he has a big showdown with a war boss. He throws his hammer in its face, it explodes, a lot of things explode, and Vulkan is presumed dead. And that is basically it. That's the last known thing we have from Vulkan. But we all know that Vulkan cannot die. Vulkan is a perpetual. So that means Vulkan obviously survived that fight with the beast, and he is now somewhere in the galaxy. I personally think he went back to Caldera because that is where he swore an oath to protect that planet always. So I think he just went back there, and he's still on that planet, protecting that planet in secret. I'm sure he has access to Imperial information. Vulkan is a master technician, blacksmith, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure he's in the know of information when it comes to Imperial stuff. So I'm sure he knows Guilliman has returned, and Guilliman is now leading the Imperium. Maybe that's going to give him some incentive to maybe stand at his brother's side once again. Maybe it's going to actually put him more into like self-exile, because he knows that Guilliman is here, he's leading the Imperium, and the Imperium really doesn't need him anymore, so that's where he's just got to stay. But then again, we do have like a prophecy from the Salamanders where if they find all the artifacts of Vulkan, Vulkan left a bunch of artifacts, and if the Salamanders find him, it supposedly leads them to Vulkan, and then Vulkan will return and lead the Salamanders, and then hopefully join in with, of course, Rabute now, who's returned and stuff like that, and he can stand by his side, and they can fight the evilness of Chaos, Xenos, and everything like that. I think this is a perfect time for someone like the character of Vulkan to return to the story. Yes, you have Guilliman there, but when you look at the other side of the coin with the traitor Primarchs, his traitor brothers, you've got Magnus, you've got Mortarion, you have Angron returning, Fulgrim's going to be returning as well. I don't know if it's going to be in 10th edition, 11th edition, 12th edition, but listen, Fulgrim is going to be returning to the setting, to the tabletop, to the 40k narrative. And on top of that, it is rumoured that we are getting another Loyalist Primarch returning for 10th edition. Of course, I've stated that to be the Lion because I trust my source. But how cool would it be if we had Guilliman, the Lion, and Vulkan, like the triumphant of the Primarchs? You have Vulkan with his brains and his logistics. You have the Lion with his tactical brilliance and his just sheer swordsmanship. He is like the beast. And then you have Vulkan, who is basically like the people's Primarch. You know, he's there to protect the people, to protect the Empire, the essence of humanity. I think that works out perfect. And with all the upcoming battles that we're going to be having, all the narrative changes that is going to be going on, I'm sure we're going to start seeing some of the big stuff happening by the end of the year. Apparently that's when we're going to start seeing the book series to 10th slowly building up, and some big things are about to happen with Chaos, I'm being told. So I'm really, really hoping that maybe the narrative team in those books can start leaving some breadcrumbs, not only to potentially the Lion's return, but other Loyalist Primarchs return. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that one of those Primarchs will be Vulkan, because having Vulkan back in the setting, not only will it sell a bunch of models, right? From a business standpoint, let's just talk about this for a business standpoint for one bit. Vulkan is a very, very popular Primarch. I love Vulkan. I'm an Imperial Vis player. I'm sure 90% of you now watching this video love Vulkan. Even the Chaos players love Vulkan. They respect Vulkan because what he does, he gives great hugs. You know, he's the strongest Primarch out of everyone. He's just an absolute fantastic character, fantastic Primarch, and he's just an absolute badass. So in terms of sales, he would sell like hotcakes. And as I've stated, having him back in the lore would just be a godsend as well. It literally would be amazing to have Vulkan and his talks and his weapons and just his general Vulcanness around. Right? It would be absolutely amazing just to see him back in the 41st millennium and just absolutely wrecking face, aiding his brothers, leading the Salamanders again. How cool would it be for you Salamander players to have your Primarch back, leading you from the front, absolutely purging with flame and bolter? It would be something to witness. and it would be a fantastic, I think, narrative piece for the setting as well. I know a lot of people don't like Primarchs coming back to 40k. I'm one of these people that talk Primarchs all the time. I think I'm doing another Primarch video tomorrow talking about the most, the worst Primarchs and stuff like that. Anyway, enough waffling from me. I've been talking far too long in this video. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback on this. Where do you think Vulkan is? Should Vulkan come back to the setting? Should he remain in self-exile? Again, Vulkan's not dead, right? I am 110% convinced Vulkan is not dead. He can't die. He's a perpetual. He cannot die. You can do anything to him. Magnus proved this point in the Echoes of Eternity. He killed him so many ways. I'm like, okay, then if he's died all these ways, then it's just that Vulkan has to live. He has to live in 40k, and he's somewhere out there, and we need him to return and help us defeat the powers that threaten the Imperium of mankind. Right, see you now. Have a great day, and bye-bye.